everyone, this is Katie calling with Calling Cosplay, and I am doing another tutorial. This is for a Pokemon Pikachu themed sweatshirt that I made. This is yet another tutorial where I'm making something that is not for myself. This is for another member of the cosplay squad as a birthday present. The fabric I'm using for this is a furry 100% polyester fabric, so it does have a way that the fur lays flat. That's going to be important. When you cut out your patterns for the sweater, you want it to lay the same way for all parts of your sweater so that the fur lays flat top to bottom for all pieces of your sweater and for all of the applique stitching. For the pattern I'm going to use this easy sewing sweatshirt pattern, and I'm going to take the pattern for sweatshirt C and I'm going to take the pocket for sweatshirt D. So here I am cutting out the pattern, and you'll notice that I have the front, the back, the side front, and the side back, and all of them are facing the same direction from top to bottom, as well as with the sleeve. And for the pocket, I'm actually going to put that on a fold because I'm not doing the separating zipper down the middle. I'm doing a pull-over sweatshirt instead. So I'm going to put that on the fold instead of cutting it out separately. And I'm going to cut out two of the hood so the hood can be lined, and that's going to hide all our applique stitching on the inside of the hood. I'm going to get started by sewing the hood together. So right sides together, I'm going to sew that seam connecting the hood. I'm going to do this for both the hood and for the hood lining. Next, I'm going to pattern out the cheek, the eye, the pupil of the eye, the ear, and the ear tips. And then these can be cut out in, I chose a different color of this 100% polyester, very soft. For sewing on the cheek and the eye and all the applique onto the hood, I'm using a tight zigzag stitch or an applique stitch. I actually did an entire tutorial on how to do an applique stitch. I used it for my BB-8 original design, and I will link that video in the description down below. So here I'm just doing a really tight zigzag stitch and following along the outside of the cheek spot. And I'm using the same color thread as what I'm appliquing on, so I'm using a red thread in this case. Then I'm going to switch to a darker thread and again do that tight zigzag stitch. Next I'm going to make the ears, so I cut out the ear part in a yellow polyester and the dark black part also in a polyester. I'm going to sew the tip onto the ear, and I'm going to have two sides of the ear, and I'm going to sew those sides together. And then serge it so when you flip it inside out, it's not so bulky. And then after you have that done, you can flip this inside out. Once you have it inside out, you can stuff it. I just used normal stuffing that you would use for pillows or plushies. And for sewing the ears onto the hood, I did have to hand sew it. So I just hand sewed it onto the hood. And then I am done with the outside of the hood. Now I'm going to sew the hood to the inside hood lining. So you're going to take that other hood right sides together and sew along that outer edge. Then when you flip it inside out, you should have the soft portion on both the outside and the inside of the hood, and your hood is done. Time to start sewing the actual sweater. I'm going to start by sewing the front to the side front, just following along that seam as indicated in the pattern. And I'm sewing this with a zigzag stitch, as this does still have a little bit of stretch to it. Next, I'm going to do the little Pikachu stripes on the back. So I'm going to pattern this and cut it out. And I'm going to keep in mind which direction the fur is laying on the brown and the yellow so that it will lay in the same direction for both of them and it will be very smooth. Again, I'm using the applique stitch as before, just that really tight zigzag on top of the back of the sweater. Then I'm going to sew the side back to the back. And I'm serging all of this just so it is nice and smooth on the inside and have a nice clean seam. Next, I'm going to do the sleeves. There is a little dart at the top, so I'm going to sew that dart. And then I'm going to sew one side of that shoulder seam to the side front, and then the other side of that shoulder seam to the side back. And at this point, you should have a very long seam going from your waist all the way up through your armpit and then down to your wrist. That should all match up together and be one long seam. So you can sew that long seam together, and you should now have, if you do this for both sides, a sweater. Next, I'm going to sew the pocket, and since I couldn't just sew on a normal yellow pocket, I had to also add brown onto the edges. So I took the pocket pattern design and I cut out that little tab at the end, and then that brown can just fold over so it'll be the edge of your pocket. And so I'm going to fold that brown over and sew that down with a zigzag stitch. So now you can tack this down onto the front of the sweater. Just fold over the top and bottom so those are also nice, smooth, and hemmed. And then you can just sew those down onto the top of the sweater. If you would like to do this before sewing the sweater together, I think that would be a very good idea. Next, I'm going to add the cuffs. This is also from pattern D. I added a little bit of width to this cuff because this fabric does not stretch as much as you would need it to. So instead, I just made a larger cuff so your hands can still fit through. For the cuffs, you're gonna fold it and sew the sides together so you have your tube, serge it, and then you're going to flip that in half. And I'm still folding it on that fold, and I'm going to sew that onto the end of the sleeve. Then I'm going to serge the bottom of the sweatshirt and the top where the neckline is, and I'm going to hem the bottom of the sweatshirt, just fold that over and hem it. And for the top, I am going to sew on that hood that we made. So the hood just goes right there on the neckline opening. Any portion that is not covered by the hood, you can just turn over into a hem. And that is it for this tutorial. This sweater was extremely soft, so I am very much tempted to make another one of a different Pokemon. It is very comfortable. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section down below, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Until then, I will see you in the next video. Go have an awesome day.